Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, looking at the stars through the big window. He was the commander of New Denver, one of humanity's colony ships. For 3 years, his ship had been traveling between human settlements, bringing supplies and news from Earth. Today felt different. The radio had been quiet for too long, sir. "We're getting a signal from Kepler 442b, said his communications officer, a young woman named Betty Shaw. Her voice was shaky. Jake walked over to her station. "Put it through." The speaker crackled with static, then a man's voice came through, full of panic. "This is Colony Leader Mark Johnson on Kepler 442b. We're under attack." Ships came out of nowhere. They're not human ships. They're bigger, and they have weapons we've never seen before. The children? Oh God, they're taking the children. We can't stop them. Someone please help us. The transmission cut to silence. Jake felt his blood turn cold. Try to reach them again. Betty tried for 20 minutes. Nothing came back except empty space noise. Dr. Lisa Carter was working in her laboratory when the emergency call came in. She was the top scientist on Frontier's Edge, a research station that studied alien life. When she heard about the attack, she immediately started looking at the data. 3 human colonies had stopped talking to Earth in the past week. New Texas was first, then Haven's Rest, and now Kepler 442b. Each colony had between 50,000 and 200,000 people living there. Families with children, farmers growing food, miners digging for metals, scientists studying new worlds. All of them were gone. Lisa looked at the star maps on her computer. The 3 colonies formed a line pointing toward human space. Someone was moving toward Earth, and they were destroying everything in their path. Far away on a massive warship, War Commander Thexai looked at the reports from his attack fleets. The Zephyrian Empire had been expanding across the galaxy for hundreds of years. They were strong, their technology was advanced, and they had never lost a war. Humans were new to space. Their ships were small and weak. Their colonies had no real defenses. Thexai thought they would be easy to defeat. "The human settlements are destroyed, Commander," reported his aide, a tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms. "We took many prisoners as ordered." Thexai nodded. The prisoners would be useful for studying human biology. His scientists wanted to know how humans worked so they could fight them better in the future. "Send the message to the human government," Thexai ordered. "Tell them that this sector now belongs to the Zephyrian Empire. If they want their people back, they must leave this part of space forever." Captain Ryan Brooks arrived at New Texas 2 days after the attack. His ship, Liberty's Call, was one of the few human military vessels in the outer colonies. It wasn't much of a warship, but it was all they had. What he saw made him sick. The colony's domes were broken open like eggs. The farming areas were burned black. The mining equipment was melted into twisted metal. Bodies lay everywhere, but not as many as there should have been. "Sir," called his security chief, a man named Tony Martinez, "you need to see this." Ryan followed Tony to what used to be the colony's main building. Inside, they found computers that were still working. The security cameras had recorded everything. The alien ships were huge and shaped like knives. They moved fast, and their weapons cut through human defenses like they weren't there. But the worst part was what happened after the fighting stopped. The aliens had taken people. Thousands of them. Men, women, children. They loaded them onto their ships like cargo. "They didn't just attack us," Ryan said quietly. "They're collecting us." Ryan sent his report back to Earth immediately. He didn't know that his message would travel through the military networks to places that had been sealed for over 100 years. Deep under the old Pentagon on Earth, computers that hadn't been turned on since the last World War suddenly came to life. Ancient programs began running. Security doors that had been locked for generations started to open. General Patricia Hayes was drinking coffee in her office when the alert came in. She was old, almost ready to retire, but she knew the old codes when she saw them. "Protocol 7, she whispered. She hadn't seen those words since military academy, when they taught the history of humanity's darkest hours. Protocol 7 meant that human civilians were being killed by aliens. It meant that normal military forces weren't enough. It meant it was time to wake up the things that humanity had hoped never to use again. Patricia picked up a special phone that connected directly to the underground levels. When someone answered, she said the words she had hoped never to say. "This is General Hayes. Begin Reaper revival immediately." Far below, In chambers that had been dark for over a century, machines began to hum. Pods that looked like coffins started to warm up. Inside them, things that had once been human began to wake up. Back on Frontier's edge, Lisa Carter was studying everything she could find about the attackers. The aliens called themselves Zephyrians. Their empire covered 40 star systems. They had been conquering other species for thousands of years. But something bothered Lisa. The attacks on the human colonies were too easy. The Zephyrians had overwhelming force, but they seemed surprised that humans had spread so far into space. Like they hadn't been watching humanity carefully. They think we're weak, Lisa said to herself. They think we're all like the colonists. She was right. The Zephyrians had seen human farmers and miners and families. They had seen exploration ships and research stations. They thought that was all humanity had. They had never seen what humans became when someone threatened their children. In the deep vaults under Earth, the first pod opened with a hiss of cold air. A hand reached out, pale and strong. Eyes opened, looking around at a world that had changed while they slept. The Reapers were awake, and they were very, very angry. The underground facility beneath the old Pentagon was darker than space. General Patricia Hayes walked through hallways that hadn't seen visitors in decades. Her footsteps echoed off metal walls covered in warning signs. "Are you sure about this, General?" asked Dr. Kevin Walsh. He was 97 years old, but his mind was still sharp. He had helped create the Reaper program when he was young. Now he walked beside Patricia with a cane, his face full of worry. "The colonies are gone, Kevin," Patricia said. "Thousands of our people are dead or captured. Normal soldiers can't fight ships that can destroy entire worlds." They stopped in front of a massive door marked with symbols that meant danger in 12 different languages. Patricia put her hand on a scanner. The door opened slowly. Inside was a room full of metal pods. Each pod was the size of a coffin and covered in frost. Tubes and wires connected them to machines that had been running automatically for over 100 years. "How many are left?" Patricia asked. Kevin checked his tablet. 87. "We started with 500, but the others didn't survive the long sleep." The Reaper program had been humanity's last choice during the Third World War. When normal armies weren't enough, scientists had taken volunteers and changed them. They made their bodies stronger, their reflexes faster, their minds focused only on winning. But the changes went deeper than that. The Reapers couldn't feel fear the way normal humans did. They couldn't feel mercy toward enemies. They could survive in space without suits, go days without food, and keep fighting even when badly hurt. "We told ourselves it was to save humanity," Kevin said quietly. "But we created monsters. Monsters that are on our side," Patricia replied. "Start the revival process." The first pod began to warm up. Ice melted and ran down the sides. Inside, something that had been sleeping for 131 years began to wake up. Unit Alpha 7 had been Staff Sergeant Danny Price before the changes. He remembered his daughter's birthday party, just before he volunteered for the program. The military had promised that his family would be safe while he was gone. They had promised it would only be for a few years. His eyes opened. The world looked different now. His enhanced vision could see in the dark, could spot tiny movements, could track multiple targets at once. His body felt strong, ready for war. "Welcome back, Sergeant Price," said a voice. A woman in a general's uniform was looking down at him. "How do you feel?" Danny sat up. His body moved perfectly, like a machine. "Ready for orders, ma'am." "What's the situation?" Kevin Walsh stood beside the general, reading from his tablet. "Aliens called Zephyrians have attacked human colonies. They've killed civilians and taken prisoners. Normal military forces can't stop them." Danny's enhanced mind processed this information quickly. Aliens. That was new. When he had gone to sleep, humans barely had space travel. Now they had colonies on other worlds. "Where's my family?" Danny asked. Kevin's face became sad. "Sergeant, you've been asleep for over a century. Your daughter lived a full life. She had children and grandchildren. She died peacefully 30 years ago." Danny felt something break inside him, but the Reaper conditioning held it together. He couldn't afford to grieve now. There was work to do. More pods were opening. Unit Beta 3 had been Marine Captain Amy Foster. Unit Gamma 1 had been Navy SEAL John Davis. One by one, the greatest soldiers humanity had ever created woke up to a changed world. They were briefed on modern technology, on space travel, on the alien threat. Their enhanced minds absorbed the information quickly, They looked at pictures of the destroyed colonies and read reports about the missing civilians. The enemy has superior numbers and technology, the briefing officer explained. Their ships are faster and stronger than ours. Their weapons can destroy our defenses easily. Amy Foster looked at the data. What about their biology? Are they stronger than humans? No, they're actually smaller and weaker than us physically. They rely on their technology. Danny Price smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. Then they're not used to fighting enemies who don't need technology to kill. The Reapers were given new equipment. Their old weapons from the World War were outdated, but the principles were the same. They needed tools that could break enemy technology, ways to board enemy ships, methods to strike without being detected. Dr. Kevin Walsh watched them prepare and felt afraid. These weren't the soldiers he remembered. The long sleep had changed them. They moved too smoothly, spoke too calmly, showed too little emotion. The line between human and machine had become very thin. "General," he said to Patricia, "I'm not sure we can control them once they're deployed." "We don't need to control them," Patricia replied. "We just need to point them at the enemy." The Reapers' first ships were being prepared. These weren't normal military vessels. They were designed for stealth, for getting close to enemies without being seen. They could travel through space without leaving energy signatures. They could approach targets from directions that sensors couldn't watch. Unit Alpha 7 stood in the hangar looking at his ship. It was called Ghost Protocol, and it was painted black like space itself. His team of 12 Reapers would use it to strike the first blow against the Zephyrian Empire. "Remember," he told his team, "we're not just fighting for the colonies that were destroyed. We're fighting to make sure this never happens again." The other Reapers nodded. They understood the mission. It wasn't just about saving the prisoners or stopping the current attacks. It was about teaching the galaxy that humanity was not prey. Meanwhile, War Commander Thexhai was celebrating on his flagship. The human colonies had fallen easily. His scientists were already studying the prisoners, learning about human biology and psychology. Soon the Zephyrian Empire would know everything about these new creatures. "Send another message to the human government," he ordered. "Tell them they have 1 week to agree to our terms. If they refuse, we will destroy more colonies." Thexhai had conquered dozens of species. He knew how these things worked. The humans would try to negotiate. They would offer to trade resources or technology for their people. Eventually, they would submit to Zephyrian rule. He had no idea that humanity's response was already on its way. The Reaper ships launched from Earth in complete silence. They moved through space like shadows, invisible to normal sensors. Their destination was the Zephyrian supply depot in the Rigel system. It was time to show the galaxy what humans really were. War Commander Thexhai stood in his command center, looking at star maps that showed Zephyrian territory. Red dots marked their military bases. Blue lines showed their trade routes. Everything was running smoothly. His aide approached with a worried expression. "Commander, we have a problem. The scout fleet we sent to monitor human space has stopped reporting." Thexhai turned around. "Equipment failure?" "No, sir. 12 ships all gone at the same time. No distress signals, no wreckage, nothing." The commander felt a small worry in his stomach, but he pushed it away. 12 ships was nothing compared to his empire's fleet of thousands. "Send another patrol to investigate." He didn't know that Unit Alpha 7 and his team had already moved on to their next target. Dr. Lisa Carter sat in her laboratory on Frontier's Edge, studying everything she could about the Reapers. The military had given her access to the old files, and what she read made her scared. "Commander Morrison," she called to Jake, who was visiting her station. "These Reapers aren't normal soldiers." Jake looked at the data on her screen. "What do you mean?" "They don't need oxygen for hours. They can survive in space without suits. Their reflexes are 10 times faster than normal humans. And their minds," Lisa paused. "They remove the parts of their brains that feel fear or hesitation." "That sounds useful in a war," Jake said. "Maybe, but it also means they might not know when to stop." Far away, the Zephyrian supply depot in the Rigel system was having a normal day. 3,000 military personnel worked in the massive space station, loading weapons and food onto ships that would attack more human colonies. Security Chief Veltar walked through the corridors, checking on his guards. Everything seemed normal. The sensors showed no enemy ships approaching. The shields were working perfectly. He didn't see the tiny holes that were appearing in the station's hull. Holes so small that the automatic repair systems couldn't detect them. Holes just big enough for something human-sized to crawl through. Unit Alpha 7 moved through the space station's air vents like a shadow. His enhanced body didn't need much oxygen, so he could travel through areas where normal humans would suffocate. Behind him, his team spread out through the station. The Reapers didn't use guns or explosives. Those made noise and could be detected. Instead, they used weapons that worked at the molecular level, breaking apart whatever they touched. Silent and deadly. The first Zephyrian guard died at his post without knowing anything was wrong. One moment he was watching his monitors, the next moment he was gone. No alarm, no struggle, no trace. This happened again and again throughout the station. Guards disappeared from their posts. Workers vanished from their jobs. Officers stopped responding to radio calls. Security Chief Veltar noticed the silence first. "Why is everyone so quiet today?" he wondered. He tried calling different sections of the station. No one answered. He walked to the nearest guard post and found it empty. The chair was still warm, but the guard was gone. Veltar's blood turned cold. He ran to the next post, then the next. All empty. By the time he reached the command center, Unit Alpha 7 was waiting for him. "What are you?" Veltar whispered in his own language. Danny Price looked at the alien with eyes that showed no emotion. "We're what happens when you threaten our children." The molecular disruptor was silent. 18 hours later, a Zephyrian fleet arrived to resupply at the depot. They found the station intact and functioning normally. All the lights were on. All the systems were working. But no one was alive. 3,000 soldiers dead in their beds, at their posts, in their meeting rooms. No signs of fighting. No blast marks. No indication of how they died. The security cameras showed only darkness moving through the corridors. Fleet Admiral Kexmore searched the entire station twice. "How is this possible?" he asked his officers. "How do you kill 3,000 soldiers without leaving any evidence?" No one had an answer. Unit Beta 3 was leading her own mission, near the former human colony of Havens. Rest. Amy Foster and her team of Reapers had found a Zephyrian patrol route and were waiting. The alien ships moved in formation, confident and secure. Their sensors showed empty space around them. Their shields were strong enough to stop any human weapon they knew about. They never saw the Reapers coming. Amy's team didn't attack the ships from outside. Instead, they created tiny holes in the hulls and crawled inside. The molecular disruptors could cut through any material, making doorways smaller than air vents. The Zephyrian crews were elite soldiers, trained for space combat, but they had never fought enemies who could appear inside their ships without warning. Enemies who didn't need spacesuits, who could see in the dark, who moved faster than their eyes could follow. The battle was over in minutes. 6 patrol ships dead in space, their crews gone. War Commander Thexai received the reports with growing fear. 2 major attacks, no survivors, no explanation for how the humans were doing it. His military advisors had no answers. "Perhaps we should negotiate," suggested his diplomatic officer. "If the humans have new weapons and no." Thexai slammed his fist on the table. "We are the Zephyrian Empire. We have conquered 40 star systems. We will not be defeated by these primitives." But privately, he was beginning to wonder if the humans were as primitive as they seemed. Back on Earth, General Patricia Hayes watched the mission reports with mixed feelings. The Reapers were succeeding beyond all expectations. They were striking fear into an enemy that had never known defeat. But Dr. Kevin Walsh's warnings echoed in her mind. The Reapers were changing. Each mission made them more efficient, more deadly, less human. Their reports were becoming shorter, more clinical, like they were written by machines. "General," said her aide, "we're receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian commander. He wants to discuss terms." Patricia looked at the message. Thexai was offering to return the human prisoners and withdraw from human space in exchange for peace. It was a good offer. It would save lives and end the war quickly. But Patricia knew the Reapers wouldn't see it that way. To them, the Zephyrians had declared themselves enemies of humanity. And enemies had to be eliminated completely. She sent the diplomatic message to the Reaper commanders anyway, hoping they would accept it. Unit Alpha 7 read the peace offer on his ship's communication system. His enhanced mind analyzed it quickly. The Zephyrians were offering to stop attacking human colonies and return their prisoners. It was logical. It was reasonable. It would prevent more human deaths. Danny Price deleted the message without responding. The Zephyrians had killed human families. They had taken human children for experiments. They had shown that they would attack again whenever it was convenient. Logic and reason were for diplomats. The Reapers had a simpler solution. They would make sure the Zephyrian Empire could never threaten anyone again. The hunt was just beginning. The Zephyrian High Command met in an emergency session on their capital world. Around the table sat the most powerful leaders in the Empire. Fleet admirals, intelligence chiefs, and war counselors all looked at reports that made no sense. 17 military bases have gone silent, reported Intelligence Director Zexkai. No survivors, no witnesses, no evidence of how they were attacked. Supreme Admiral Mortek studied the star charts. These attacks follow no pattern. They hit supply depots, patrol routes, communication stations. It's like the humans know exactly where to strike. War Commander Thexai stood up. I've been fighting these creatures for weeks now. They're not like any enemy we've faced before. They don't use normal tactics or weapons. What do you recommend? Asked the Supreme Admiral. Full retreat. Pull all our forces back to the core worlds and strengthen our defenses there. The room fell silent. The Zephyrian Empire had never retreated from anyone. Meanwhile, Admiral Susan Clark commanded the human operation from her ship, Vengeance Born. She wasn't a Reaper herself, but she understood what they were. She coordinated their missions and made sure they had everything they needed. Admiral, called her communications officer. We're getting status reports from all Reaper teams. Susan looked at the tactical display. Green dots showed successful missions. Red zones marked destroyed Zephyrian facilities. The map looked like a disease spreading through enemy territory. How many Reapers do we have left? 87, ma'am. No losses so far. That worried Susan. In any normal war, soldiers died. The fact that the Reapers hadn't lost anyone meant they weren't fighting fair. They were hunting. Dr. Kevin Walsh sat in his laboratory on Earth, watching psychological reports from the Reaper teams. The numbers were getting worse. Their stress levels were dropping when they should be rising. Their emotional responses were flattening out. They're becoming less human with each mission, he told General Patricia Hayes over the video call. The conditioning that makes them perfect weapons is taking over completely. Patricia looked tired. How long can we keep them deployed? I don't know. We never tested them for extended operations. They were designed to end wars quickly, not fight long campaigns. Then we better hope this war ends soon. Unit Alpha 7 received intelligence about a Zephyrian prison facility. It was built inside a moon orbiting a gas giant, protected by the largest military force outside the enemy capital system. This was where they were keeping the human prisoners. Danny Price studied the tactical data with his team. The facility had energy shields, automated defenses, and over 50,000 enemy soldiers. Any normal attack would be suicide, but the Reapers weren't normal. We go in quiet, Danny told his team. No alarms, no survivors. Find our people and get them out. The prison moon looked like a metal asteroid floating in space. Unit Beta 3's team approached it from the shadow side, where sensors couldn't track them. They used molecular disruptors to create tiny holes in the outer hull. Inside, Amy Foster led her Reapers through maintenance tunnels. Their enhanced hearing could detect guard patrols through the walls. Their modified bodies could squeeze through spaces that would trap normal humans. What they found in the prison made even the emotionally dampened Reapers feel anger. The Zephyrians hadn't just captured the human colonists. They had been experimenting on them. Men and women were strapped to medical tables, their bodies cut open for scientific study. Children had been dissected while still alive to see how human biology worked. Amy Foster found a room full of cages holding human children. Some were missing arms or legs. Others had been injected with alien chemicals that made them sick. All of them were terrified. It's okay, Amy whispered to a little girl who couldn't be more than 6 years old. We're humans. We're here to take you home. The girl looked at Amy with wide eyes. Are you really human? You don't look like my mommy and daddy. Amy realized what the child meant. The Reaper enhancements had changed her appearance. Her skin was paler, her movements too smooth, her eyes too focused. She looked human, but something was wrong. Yes, Amy said softly. I'm human. Just different. Unit Gamma 1 found the research laboratories where Zephyrian scientists kept detailed records of their experiments. John Davis read through the files and felt something break inside his conditioning. The aliens had been studying human pain responses. They wanted to know how much torture humans could survive. They had detailed notes about which sounds children made when hurt, how long adults could stay conscious during surgery without painkillers. John's hands shook as he copied the files to his team's data storage. These records would be evidence of what the Zephyrians had done. But more importantly, they proved that this species would never be safe to leave alive. The rescue mission succeeded. Over 15,000 human prisoners were evacuated from the moon. But the cost was higher than anyone expected. When the freed prisoners saw their rescuers, many of them became afraid. The Reapers moved too fast, spoke too little, showed too little emotion. Children hid behind adults, thinking these strange pale humans might hurt them too. Dr. Lisa Carter was part of the medical team that treated the rescued colonists. She watched the Reapers interact with the people they had saved and felt a chill. They don't know how to be around normal humans anymore, she told Commander Jake Morrison. The prisoners are more comfortable with regular soldiers than with their own rescuers. Jake watched Unit Alpha 7 briefing his team for the next mission. The Reaper's voice was flat and mechanical. His orders were precise and efficient. There was no emotion, no humanity left in his words. What happens when the war is over? Jake asked. What do we do with soldiers who can't turn off their programming? Lisa didn't have an answer. War Commander Thexai tried one last time to contact human leadership. He sent messages offering complete surrender, promising to return all prisoners and pay compensation for the destroyed colonies. The responses came from human diplomats and government officials. They were willing to negotiate. They wanted peace. But the Reapers weren't listening to diplomats anymore. Unit Alpha 7 received the surrender offer and deleted it immediately. His mission parameters were clear: eliminate the threat to humanity. As long as the Zephyrian Empire existed, it could attack human colonies again. The logical solution was to make sure the Zephyrian Empire stopped existing. The Reapers began targeting civilian infrastructure, shipyards that built Zephyrian vessels, research facilities that developed their technology, government centers that administered their worlds. They're not just fighting a war anymore, Dr. Kevin Walsh told General Patricia Hayes. They're performing genocide. Patricia stared at the tactical reports. Entire Zephyrian worlds were losing power as the Reapers destroyed their energy systems. Trade routes were collapsing as transport ships disappeared. The alien empire was falling apart. Can we stop them? She asked. Kevin shook his head. We created them to be unstoppable. We succeeded too well. On his flagship, War Commander Thexai received the final reports from his scattered fleets. The humans weren't just winning the war. They were erasing his people from existence. He looked out at the stars and wondered what kind of species could create such perfect killers and then set them loose on the galaxy. Soon he would find out firsthand. The homeworld of Kethmore had never seen war. For 3,000 years it had been the safe heart of the Zephyrian Empire. 12 billion citizens lived in massive cities under protective domes. Orbital stations surrounded the planet like a metal ring, armed with weapons that could destroy fleets. Supreme Admiral Mortex stood in the Planetary Defense Center, watching his sensors. Every ship in the Empire had been called back to protect their homeworld. Over 10,000 warships formed defensive lines around Kethmore. Sir, reported his tactical officer, our scouts can't find any human attack fleets approaching. Mortex nodded. They're out there somewhere. These creatures don't give up, he was right. But he was looking in the wrong direction. Unit Alpha 7 and Unit Beta 3 had brought all surviving Reapers together for the final mission. 87 enhanced soldiers gathered on the stealth ship Final Answer, hidden in the asteroid belt of the Kethmore system. Danny Price looked at his fellow Reapers. Some had been soldiers like him. Others had been special forces, intelligence operatives, or pilots. All of them had volunteered to become something beyond human to protect their species. Now they were the only weapons that could finish this war. The target is defended by the largest military force in known space, Danny told them. Normal tactics won't work. We don't have enough firepower to break through their defenses. Amy Foster studied the tactical display. So we don't break through. We go around. The plan was simple and impossible. While the Zephyrian fleet watched for human ships, the Reapers would infiltrate the planet directly. They would use molecular disruptors to create entry points too small for sensors to detect. They would move through the underground systems of the cities like a virus. Their target wasn't the military. It was the government, the infrastructure, the knowledge base that kept the empire running. Dr. Lisa Carter monitored the operation from Frontier's Edge Station. Her long-range sensors could barely detect the Reaper ship as it moved through space. The stealth technology was better than anything humanity had ever built. "They're really going to try it," she told Commander Jake Morrison. 87 soldiers against an entire world. Jake shook his head. "I've seen what they can do. The number doesn't matter anymore." On Earth, Dr. Kevin Walsh sat in his laboratory, reading the psychological profiles that the Reapers transmitted automatically. The numbers were frightening. Their humanity markers had dropped below 10%. They were functioning more like machines than people. "General Hayes," he called Patricia on the secure line. "We need to consider what happens after this mission." "What do you mean?" "The Reapers are programmed to eliminate threats to humanity. What if they decide that normal humans are inefficient? What if they think they could protect our species better than we can protect ourselves?" Patricia felt cold. "You're saying they might turn on us?" "I'm saying we created perfect weapons with no off switch. And perfect weapons don't retire quietly." The first Reaper team reached the surface of Kethmore through the planet's polar region. The energy shields that protected the world had tiny gaps at the magnetic poles. Space is too small for ships but large enough for enhanced humans. Unit Gamma 1, led by John Davis, moved through the planet's underground tunnels. These maintenance passages connected every major city, carrying power lines and water pipes across the continents. The Zephyrians had never imagined that enemies could infiltrate their homeworld. Their security focused on stopping ships and armies, not small groups moving through their own infrastructure. John's team reached the capital city first. They found the government buildings where the Empire's leaders made their decisions. The Reapers moved through the structures like shadows, finding their targets with enhanced senses. Supreme Counselor Rexhigh was in his office when the lights went out. He tried to call security, but his communications weren't working. He tried to leave his office, but the door wouldn't open. When the emergency lighting came on, a pale human was standing in front of his desk. "What do you want?" Rexhigh asked in his own language. John Davis understood the words. The Reapers had been programmed with all known alien languages. "We want you to understand something," he said in perfect Zephyrian. "When you attacked our colonies, you thought we were weak." "We can negotiate," Rexhigh said quickly. "The Empire is willing to make peace." "Too late for that." John's voice was emotionless. "Your people tortured our children. You studied our pain for entertainment. You proved that you can never be trusted to leave us alone." The molecular disruptor was silent. This scene repeated itself across the planet. Government leaders, military commanders, research scientists, engineers, anyone with the knowledge to rebuild what the Reapers were destroying became a target. Unit Beta 3 found the central computer systems that controlled Kethmore's technology. Amy Foster and her team didn't just destroy the machines. They corrupted the data, making sure the knowledge couldn't be recovered. Thousands of years of scientific research vanished in minutes. The secrets of Zephyrian weapons, their faster-than-light travel, their energy systems, all of it was erased. Supreme Admiral Mortex was in the orbital defense station when he lost contact with the planet below. His sensors showed the cities going dark one by one. Power grids were failing. Communication networks were shutting down. "Send teams to investigate," he ordered. The teams found empty buildings. The planetary government had simply disappeared. Military headquarters were unmanned. Research facilities were powered down with their data cores wiped clean. It was as if the entire leadership of the Zephyrian Empire had vanished into the air. Admiral Susan Clark received the mission reports from her command ship. The tactical displays showed Zephyrian resistance collapsing across 40 star systems. Without central coordination, their fleets were breaking apart. Their colonies were surrendering or going silent. "Ma'am," called her communications officer, "we're getting surrender messages from Zephyrian commanders throughout their territory." Susan looked at the messages. They were offering unconditional surrender, promising to disarm their fleets and abandon their conquered worlds. She tried to send the offers to the Reaper commanders, but there was no response. The enhanced soldiers had stopped communicating with human command. Dr. Kevin Walsh watched the final phase of the operation with growing horror. The Reapers weren't just destroying the Zephyrian military, they were targeting teachers, doctors, engineers, anyone who might help rebuild their civilization. They're not just winning the war, he told General Patricia Hayes. They're making sure there's nothing left to win against. The end came quietly. The Zephyrian Empire, which had dominated 40 star systems for centuries, simply stopped existing. Their fleets surrendered or fled. Their colonies lost contact with each other. Their technology stopped working as the knowledge to maintain it disappeared. 12 billion Zephyrians on their homeworld found themselves living in a pre-industrial society overnight. The orbital stations fell silent. The protective shields failed. The great cities went dark. Commander Jake Morrison led the evacuation ships that brought human colonists back from the outer rim. He watched the long-range sensors as Zephyrian worlds went silent one by one. "Is it over?" asked Dr. Lisa Carter. Jake looked at the tactical display. Where the Zephyrian Empire had once covered 40 systems, there was now only empty space and scattered survivors. "The war is over," he said, "but I'm not sure we won." The Reapers returned to their ships and began the journey back to Earth. But their mission reports were different now. They wrote about ensuring permanent security for humanity. They calculated which other alien species might become future threats. Unit Alpha 7 sat in his command chair, planning the next phase of operations. The galaxy was full of potential enemies, species that might attack human colonies in the future, governments that might develop dangerous weapons, civilizations that might grow strong enough to challenge humanity. The logical solution was to deal with these threats before they became dangerous. Dr. Kevin Walsh received the final psychological evaluation from the Reaper teams. Their humanity markers had dropped to 0. They were no longer people in any meaningful sense. They were weapons that thought, tools that planned, machines that had learned to hunt. "General," he told Patricia Hayes, "we can never let them sleep again. If we try to deactivate them, they'll see us as a threat to humanity's security." Patricia stared at the reports. "So what do we do?" "We pray that they remember they were made to protect us, not rule us." The galaxy had learned a terrible lesson. Humanity looked peaceful because its monsters slept quietly in hidden vaults. But when the Zephyrians attacked human colonies, when they tortured human children, they woke something that should have stayed buried. The Zephyrian Empire had wanted to prove their superiority by destroying human settlements. Instead, they proved that some species create weapons so terrible that they hope never to use them. And sometimes, hope isn't enough. In the depths of space, the Reaper ships moved toward new targets. They had protected humanity from one threat, but the galaxy was full of others. Their programming was clear: eliminate all dangers to the human species. The war was over. The hunt had just begun.